Hello, and welcome to Plastics Today's Resin Pricing Report. I'm Norbert Sparrow, editor of Plastics Today, and I'm joined by Plastics Exchange CEO Michael Greenberg. Now, the Plastics Exchange is a resin clearinghouse that powers the ResinTel market intelligence platform, which provides daily reports on the resin markets. And you can find that at resintel.com. That's resintel.com. But Michael, actually, in the most recent resin sites, it's hard to say, the resin sites report that I've seen, you talk about a grinding year-long correction. Can you speak to that and give us a sense of where the resin markets are today?
Yeah. First, thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you and to your followers about the resin markets. It's been a very interesting and dynamic year. I, in general, not like an overly exciting year. Like I had written recently. It's been a grind. Um, there have been a few major catalysts to drive change to the market, and we've been in a general environment of oversupply, highly competitive international markets, and no, under the whole under the whole feeling of tariff and economic uncertainty. You put all that together, and you've had somewhat of a cautious stance from buyers and suppliers, producers doing their best to maintain high operating rates and export what they can, while trying to maintain good, fair pricing and margins.
Okay. So you keep a close eye on activity in the polyethylene and polypropylene markets. So let's take a closer look at market dynamics related to these two materials. First, tell us a bit about demand and pricing for polyethylene.
Well, polyethylene demand has been pretty good. Um, I, when you put domestic and exports together, demand is actually very good, and it's a lot of what the producers have been looking for. They built a lot of capacity over the last several years, and more has continued to come on. And the vast majority of the new capacity was all destined for export. Um, in the beginning of this year, the export market got really rocked. Last a year ago, December, we had all-time record polyethylene exports, and within a month or two, exports had dropped over 3 billion pounds. And within a month or two, exports had dropped nearly 1 billion pounds. And after being like I've been in the markets, the resin markets for 25 years, and something you can be sure of is the moment that polyethylene producers lose their pricing power, they're figuring out a way how to get it back. And I was pretty confident that as much of a hit the export market took, which really shook the domestic markets because you had overproduction, you had limited places to put it, to put the resin. It really kind of it sapped any upward momentum that had begun at the beginning of the year. But I was very confident that by the end of 2025, this year, that we would be back towards record exports again, if not to set a new record. And the last several months, exports have been really, really strong. It's back to over 2.7 billion pounds per month. So it's outside of that one anomaly, which was over 3 billion pounds last December. We're really at record levels again. Um, but it's been a challenge. It's been a big, big challenge. As a company, the Plastic Exchange is exporting more than we're trading domestic. This is a change, but we recognize that the markets were going to be challenging this year, and if we didn't hustle, we were gonna have a difficult year. As it turns out, we did a lot of focus on exports, and really developed a very or at least a much stronger presence in the export markets, and have been exporting to you know Mexico and Latin America is a very traditional location to ship to, but Europe has come on very, very strong and will continue to be probably the biggest growth area for polyethylene exports and maybe even polypropylene. But we've been exporting very heavily into Europe, into the Mediterranean and Africa, a little bit to China, and China's a buyer again, and to India, and different South American countries. So it's not like it's all going to one place. It's very well spread out. And but it's been a challenge. I mean, we talk about, we've got overcapacity here, polyethylene capacity here in the US. There's way more in China, and they are, the Chinese producers and traders, they're doing all that they can to sell every pellet that they could, almost regardless of price. And it's about keeping their operating rates up, and their operating rates are not strong. Their costs are high, and their operating rates are not great, but they're still selling all that they can, and they're pressuring the international markets, and which makes it a challenge. And the U.S. North American polyethylene producers have had to contend with a very aggressive competitive pricing coming out of China, and in spurts coming out of the Middle East as well. So it's been very, very interesting.
Complex picture you've painted there.
Yeah, well, it is.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what's interesting. Our industry seems to remember what happened last year and pulls it forward a little bit. Like, last year we had an early hurricane. There was a bit, but it wasn't horrendous like in years past, and there were some disruptions, but it wasn't like monumental. And in years past it had been. So there was a buildup of inventories into hurricane season, both for polyethylene and polypropylene. And this year there was a little bit, but not so much. And it was a very, very benign hurricane season. And as it continued to be, not so strong, there was ample resin availability and not a big fear for prices to get out of hand to the upside, that buyers in general were fairly conservative with their purchases.
Mhm.
But there's a double edge to that also, because like in last year in polypropylene, well, I guess we could a little bit of polypropylene. Last
We'll
year in
get to that.
polypropylene, yeah, sure. There was a huge buildup of polypropylene inventories downstream at the processor level, into and during hurricane season, and that was exacerbated by a series of PDH outages, which pushed monomer prices higher, and there was a fear for prices to get out of hand to the upside. And there was very aggressive buying year ago, 15, 16 months ago in polypropylene, but we didn't get that this year. Last year at this time, there was a huge drop off in domestic demand in polypropylene and polyethylene also, because there were fairly large buildups of inventory, polypropylene more so than polyethylene. So once the hurricane season had pretty much subsided and gotten past it, there was and we were still contending with high feedstock costs. Polypropylene buyers in particular, polyethylene too, but polypropylene buyers in particular really dropped off their demand, and it led to real fast run up in supply, and then they really slowed their reactor rates, and the less throughput for at the reactor rates lessened the demand for propylene monomer, and the price fell. And as the price was falling, there's how low can it go? Let's buy less and less, and we'll buy it all cheaper later. So that happened last year. This year's not quite the same. We didn't have the same kind of buildup, and we're not coming from a high monomer price for polypropylene or polyethylene. In fact, we're at multi-year lows in polypropylene, in propylene and polypropylene. And there's little fear of, there's little greed effect of, oh, we'll buy it much cheaper later because the market's it's already low. And there hadn't been a huge buildup in inventories. So we're seeing a little bit, while there's a drop off in domestic polypropylene demand in September, and probably probably in October. We'll see October numbers in about a week, official supply demand figures. We are feeling a lot more, the market's a lot more stable and demand is a lot more consistent at this point. It's already cheap and inventories, downstream inventories are not very high. So it's buy it as you need it. And maybe not such a, while I don't see a reason for prices to get out of hand to the upside, I don't see a reason for it. I don't see a catalyst coming. You never know. But we're historically very cheap. There's not much of a downside at this point, and there's always a potential for something that could happen. Historically, it's not a bad time to sock away a few extra pounds at this point.
Okay. Well, you anticipated my next question about polypropylene. I think we're good there. Um,
Whoops.
no, that's perfectly good. Um, I guess my let's close on this one. You, of course, are on the resin supply side. From a plastics processor perspective, and you've started to answer this a little bit. What should they be looking for in the month ahead, and especially as we get to the year end? Sometimes there are some real bargains to be had, but not always, as is my understanding.
It's true. When I talked about, we remember what happened last year, and we pull it a little bit forward this year. We've seen a trend, like it used to be Christmas specials, and there were all kinds of blow it out deals at the producer level, really special dumping inventories into year end. Well, Christmas specials kind of have become like Thanksgiving specials. And Thanksgiving specials have kind of become like Halloween specials, and they keep pulling it forward. And you wonder, there was a massive, inventory purge again during September, October. Both polyethylene and polypropylene producers dramatically reduced their operating rates, and they tightened up supply by exporting heavily. Even polypropylene, which normally exports 3-4% of their total sales, exported over 5%. Not that it's a real big number, but look, it's a little bit of a change. Propylene monomer has gotten cheap enough, and polypropylene has gotten cheap enough that polypropylene is actually becoming a viable export resin. And we talk about, 5% is not much. Polyethylene, we're bumping it up against 50% of all polyethylene sales out of the US and Canada is going export. So 50% of all sales export, and polypropylene only 5%. Not much of a big deal, but a little bit of something. Are we going to get these big inventory pushes again? I don't know. It seems like we might have gotten a taste of it already. I don't know if we're going to see it again. I don't know. It's possible we can have a whole other cycle in the next 60 days. But my feeling is that producers have been doing their best to rebalance supply demand, considering price. They've been exporting the heck out of the market. There's been good demand, albeit it's not a great price for them, but it's still profitable, and they're still cranking it out. They pulled back operating rates. Inventory's gotten a little bit tighter. They seem to have already gone through a big blowout in September and October. We'll see October numbers. Like I said, we'll see it in about a week or so. But it sure feels like exports have been like, whew. Look, we had just shy of a record volume month in October, and outside of like one of those crazy weather markets like the Houston freeze of 21, that's the only time we exceeded these volumes. So for a normal market, and this is a pretty normal market, to have record volumes, it's it says something. It's sales are very, very strong, and last month we exported more than we sold domestic.
Great.
So once again, are we expecting a big purge from here? There's going to be some deals. Of course, there always are. You got one producer who's got like too much blow mold and they want to move it, or this one's got too much low density and it wants to rebalance their inventories. But in general, the market feels a lot more balanced. And because there was like a really concerted effort, we saw like a very big drawdown in upstream polyethylene inventories, because there was very much a reduced operating rate at the reactor level. So they made a lot less resin. They're exporting a whole bunch. They pulled down more than 300 million pounds of inventory in September, and it feels like we had some kind of a repeat in October. That the last week of October, they seem kind of done. They seem kind of done. And so far in November, offers have been very sparse to begin the month. We'll see what develops, but it feels like most producers have already balanced out a lot of what they were looking to do, and guess we'll see how it develops further in the month.
Well, that's great. Great news. I think for you, right? Um, Thank you, Michael, for your insights. Always appreciate that.
Thank you.
And
Can I add a little bit more? Can I
what's that?
can I add one more thought in here,
You
please?
sure can. Yeah, go right
Thank
ahead.
you. Thank you. So we're down about 3 cents on average. Polyethylene down about 3 cents for the year. And polypropylene prices are down, I believe, 7 cents for the year. Polypropylene has very much followed monomer. But the polypropylene producers, they're trying to, I know that this is contract season, and I know a lot of contracts are going to roll over at monomer plus again. But the spot market, they are not playing at monomer plus. They want outright price. So it's gotten to the point where the polypropylene producers are thinking, well, monomer has fallen dramatically. I mean, we're down some 20, we're down 23 cents. It looks like around 23 cents from the beginning of the year. I and So yeah, I'd have to look at my notes. Maybe I'm misquoting how much polypropylene's done this year, but the vast majority of the PGP cost reduction has been passed through downstream. And the polypropylene producers are seemingly wanting to start to rebuild some margins. Like, we had all these great savings, we pass it all downstream. Now we kind of want a little bit of our margin back. So we're going to see if some contracts come out and they try to get an extra penny or two on contract. But certainly in spots, it's not. Spot is not as spot had a discount to contract. In many cases, spot is running at or above contract levels, which is interesting. And in polyethylene, we're down about 3 cents for the year, while the indexes are still up 5 to 6 cents for the year. They haven't fully settled for October, but we're seeing we're seeing a lot of slippage again with the indexes this year. We're down and they're up. So I am guessing that we've gotten to the point that they might do another non-market adjustment for polyethylene. We'll see around the beginning of the year. They tend to every few years. So if you watch the spot market, you'll see like spot polyethylene has been weak, and there's been great deals. And if you're only buying on contract, you're paying a bit more. So there are deals out there, and even though we might not see like another huge purge of special deals, overall pricing spot is cheaper than contract right now. So.
Okay. All right. Well, as I said earlier, thanks again for your insights. I really do appreciate it. And we'll talk again soon, I hope.
My pleasure. Looking forward to next time, and thank you for the opportunity to chat with you and your guys about the market.
Absolutely. Well, bye for now, Michael.
Thank you. Take care.